Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a third episode and a very special episode of Hot Topics because we will be covering the coronavirus conspiracy. That's right. Coronavirus has definitely swept the world by surprise. We have over 2.2 million cases worldwide and over, I believe, 150,000 deaths. But I'd first like to start this video in saying that this is all in good fun. I'm not necessarily proving anything. I don't have any facts as such, so it's a conspiracy for a reason. I want to first cover the topic of China. And the fact that, how is it that they only have 86,000 cases or whatever and only 4,500 deaths after last night's spike of 50% in Wuhan, may I add? The Chinese government decided that it would be, only fair that they increase their death numbers by 50% in one night to sort of cover the fact that they lied about the amount of deaths, or to sort of give the people who died some sort of, their families some sort of consolation. I don't really know why they did it, but anyway. I guess they're trying to prove to the rest of the world that they are trying to fix the errors that they have made in this great pandemic. So, going back to the fact that China has indeed, or so I believe, they have lied about coronavirus and all of its mishaps. I'd like to firstly say that coronavirus, as I said before, how can it be that they only have just over 80,000 cases when you have places like Italy and Spain in the same amount of time? Although, yes, okay, you could suggest that China had much stricter lockdowns quicker. How could you suggest that they eradicated almost the coronavirus in China when Spain and Italy spiraled into chaos in practically the same amount of time, unless of course China is lying about the amount of time that coronavirus has been around, in that it could have potentially been here since late last year. Although I found it really funny how China, just when countries started considering suing, like Italy, there was talks about suing China due to their, due to the blame of them starting coronavirus and not closing down the borders sooner, especially letting people out of Wuhan actually go and travel around the world, full well knowing that the coronavirus existed. But yeah, so China basically came out and said, as soon as Italy had suggested that they were going to potentially sue China, or perhaps China was just worried about being sued, and they will likely be sued by many other countries, let me tell you. Worldwide, I can imagine after this is all over, that China will be in serious trouble. Because essentially what's happening is, as soon as China made this mistake, they have opened up a whole heap of issues for themselves, in that in international courts, logically, the other countries can in fact sue China for their loss of their economic losses and loss of life, and the amount of trouble that it has caused all the different economies around the world and the world economy, and the fact that they heavily pay off the WHO for the WHO to practically hold out calling it a pandemic. Anyway. But going back to the fact that Italy was looking at suing them originally. So when Italy came out and said that they were going to sue, go back a step. They didn't say that, but let's say that they did say that. Did you notice that China then started blaming the US in saying that back in September last year, the US brought over the coronavirus to Wuhan at some sporting game, and it was all a ploy for the world to blame China, but it was actually in fact the US, because the US are terrible people. But I personally think that this whole thing happened because China wants to become the world leader. And currently, obviously, the US is in fact the world leader, and China basically, in my conspiracy theory, I believe that China created this in a lab in the Wuhan, Hubei province, and essentially purposely spread it so that they could essentially claim world dominance as the superpower. Oh yes, don't get me wrong, they are very much a superpower, but they want to be number one. And in order to do that, I believe their plan was create the virus in a lab as a potential biochemical weapon, then spread it without people knowing. So then by the time we all found out, it was in fact too late and it had already spread through the world. It had gotten... Anyway, and what they would then... Prior to this, what they were doing is they were sending out agents around the world, and it has been proven through photographs, especially in Australia. I believe Australia was the first country to prove this. It was proven that China had sent out secret agents to essentially buy up all essential medical supplies such as masks, hazmat suits, I think hand sanitizer, anyway, all that kind of stuff that everyone is, trying to get, and it's highly sought after. But yes, they sent out secret agents to go in, buy all this stuff in all the major developed countries like Australia, the UK, the US, Canada, or France and Germany and all that. So they sent them all out and got them to buy all that up and ship it, fly it directly back to China. And I believe that they either did that to sort of mitigate their own epidemic in the country to help their own people, or the more likely scenario is they actually bought that all up so that when it spread across the world, we all had nothing left because they'd bought it all up and they wanted to sell it back to us at double the price. That is the more likely scenario that happened. So I guess the question is China lying? Are they lying on multiple fronts? Are the amount of cases that they have said and the amount of deaths that they have said accurate to, logic? I mean, you look at the amount of urns that have been outside of the crematoriums in China, and especially in the Hubei province. Forgive me if I didn't say that right. But yeah, it's just crazy to think that, the amount of deaths that they have said is only at 4,000. That's ridiculous. You look at America alone, in New York, in the New York State, I think they've had something like 20 or 30,000 deaths in like a month, compared to China being 3 months. I mean, and then we're going to have the economic fallout after all this. So obviously the world is going to go into recession, potentially worse, and what will happen is, and China will try to come out on top by being so kind and helping all the countries, and they're now paying out Italy because of the coronavirus, so they're trying to help them as much as possible now, but it's too late, obviously, because now look at all the other countries that are in absolute chaos. But yeah, China, what they'll do is they'll try to be all the nice guy and, give as much help as possible to everyone, and then, but you know what? No one's going to trust China anymore. Their economy is going to be heavily impacted by this, and I don't think they realise how much they have hurt themselves as much as the rest of the world. I think that you might find that China will, people won't buy as much, they won't import as much from China. The whole made in China thing may be a thing of the past eventually, because people don't trust China anymore. And I'm not necessarily bagging out Chinese people, I am bagging out the Chinese government, because they are the ones who are controlling China, obviously, as a communist country. And I do feel sorry for a lot of the people that have been ridiculed by this, especially people in Australia, for example, who have been here their whole lives and being ridiculed for just being Asian because of this coronavirus. It isn't fair. And look, I think in the end, it comes down to the fact of why. Why did China do this? Perhaps we will never find out, but let's hope they start telling the truth soon. And on that note, I hope you enjoyed this personal conspiracy theory I have on the coronavirus. Thank you.